You've probably heard of Asian tigers. Those are the countries in Asia with explosive growth over the past couple of decades, and China was among them. But now it's Africa's turn. That continent is boosting what is being called the African lion economies. Africa has skyrocketed in terms of its investment attractiveness. The continent is the second most attractive destination in the world, according to a new global study. That's second only to North America. In 2011, it was third to last, but foreign direct investment has been declining over the past 2 years because of political uncertainty in North Africa. However, if you focus on sub-Saharan Africa, the picture is much, much brighter. FDI for the region has surged almost 13% to more than $50 billion last year alone. And the average size of the FDI projects rose to 70 million from 60 million just a couple of years ago. Joining me to help us break this all down, we welcome back Sabina Dewan, President and Executive Director of JustJobs Network. You just recently written an article about Africa as well. Let me start for a lot of folks here. We talk about Africa as an investment destination, but a lot of people still to this day don't realize why it is so attractive to so many multinationals. We saw Jessica earlier talking about companies like Marriott, for example, looking to add 25,000 jobs in the area. I mean, that's significant. I mean, these are some fairly significant numbers. Why is Africa, in your opinion, such a great destination?
I think Africa is a great destination because it's such a diverse continent, and there's the possibility of basically growing your business because you've got a lot of growth potential, whereas some other markets in the world are saturated. And so it's the new frontier.
It's so the new, it's like the dot-com boom. Everybody wants to be there.
Exactly.
I know we've got Japan, we've got the US, you've got Europe. Who's in the front line? Who's getting the deals right now?
Well, you already named the countries that are getting the deals, but I think the important thing to consider is whether Africa is really going to stay on this growth trajectory, right? We've seen 5.2% average annual growth for the last decade, which is very exciting for investors. But is it really going to continue? Africa is the new frontier. There's a lot of commodities there. There's a lot of opportunities for investment. But if you're not creating the jobs, and if you're not creating the political stability that come with the jobs, I think we could see a reversal.
The Ebola situation that's happening there right now, unfortunately, has shown a light on some of the weaknesses in parts of the continent. I want to emphasize this, only parts of the continent. A lot of it is in the infrastructure. Do you think that in terms of investment attractiveness, a lot of money is going to go towards issues such as healthcare, for example?
Well, I think certainly. I think a lot of investment should go towards issues like healthcare, but also towards creating jobs so that we are empowering the African people. I think a lot of investment is going into Africa on the promise that there's a rising African middle class that's going to create new markets for products and services. We are only going to realize on that potential if African people actually have the purchasing power to buy the products that you want to sell them.
If I'm running a multinational firm and I'm looking at Africa, I'm looking to put hotels there on the ground, what's my number one concern?
The fact that people need to be able to pay for those hotels, right? So if people don't have jobs and don't have good wages and don't have the opportunities to enjoy the things that you and I take for granted, like being able to stay in a nice hotel, then you're not going to get any returns on your investment.
When you look at Africa as a whole, a lot of people clump it as one big continent, one big country, and I'm guessing that's probably extremely unfair because you have areas that are significantly more developed than others. How do you explain to somebody, who may not understand Africa fully, why there is such a diverse range of developed economies?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the natural resources that different African countries have. So we know that Nigeria, for example, has one of the fastest growing economies, the biggest economies in Africa, one of the biggest and fastest growing economies in Africa, is largely so because of its oil resources. And then you've got South Africa, which is similar in that regard. But then you've got a number of other economies that aren't doing so well. So a lot of it has to do with the natural resources.
I'm just trying to put myself in a position of the locals there in Africa. I mean, you see all these foreigners from all over the world coming to the country. There has to be a sense of they want to be careful as well, right? Because they don't want to give away whatever the natural resources are or the factories. I mean, I surely think that they must be thinking ahead. What are they doing to protect themselves?
Well, I think certainly African governments need to do a lot more to protect themselves. And the first thing that they need to do is come up with and build strong institutions, institutions that create jobs, institutions that value the environment and that value the value of jobs and workers in their economy.
I want to ask you a political question. The president, the vice president, of course, all of them hosting the African summit here in town. Do you think that the U.S. has done enough? I mean, Japan obviously has made significant inroads, China as well. Where does the U.S. stand in terms of its strategic economic relationship with Africa?
Well, I think it's certainly telling that, President Obama is the first one to call a U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit. I think it's a step in the right direction, but there's certainly a lot more we could be doing. One step would be to look at how our preference program, the African Growth and Opportunity Act, is affecting jobs, job creation, and inclusive growth in Africa. That would be another step.
There's a lot of work to be done, but I guess they're getting started on it, so that's a good thing.